Hey everybody, Fox with FoxeoGames, and let's talk about early access and why it's just all around bad for the consumer. Now, some people argue that it's also bad for developers and publishers in the long run, but me personally, well, I'm here for the consumer. I'm not here for developers and publishers. I'm sure, they need their help and they need people supporting them, but I'm here to talk about the consumer, you and me, the people that actually buy the video games. So let's get right down into it. I'm not going to waste your time. One of the biggest problems with early access is that developers can earn money for selling an unfinished product. Now, many of you are saying, well, hey, Fox, that's the exact point. Isn't that just like Kickstarter? No. Unless Kickstarter offers early access to backers, which I don't think that they should, Kickstarter is you paying upfront to fund the development of a game, and then you get the game, or even sometimes don't get the game, depending on how much you pay, but you get it when it's finished. Sometimes they let people play beta versions of a game. If you get to beta test it, it's close to early access. It is what it is, But essentially, early access is beta testing a game. They used to reward people for doing this. They used to offer it to players for free, and then they would get some in-game reward for having done this work for them, because there are people that get paid to beta test games, at least there used to be. Now, you're paying to beta test a game, which used to not only be free, but it used to be recognized as an element of work that you got rewarded for by the developer or publisher. Think about that one, guys. This used to be free, and you used to get rewards for it. Now you're paying for it like it's a finished game? One of the other big problems here is that since developers can earn money for selling an unfinished game, that means that games often, never get finished. Either the developer flat out says, you know what? I'm done with it, I got bored, I'm just not going to finish this game, which has happened. They've literally said, yeah guys, I'm done with this. I know it's not finished, but I'm done. Or they just continue to sort of let it fall off. I mean, they don't make an actual announcement that they're done, but you notice that development slows, and eventually you don't hear anything for a while. And yeah, they silently dropped the product. And guess what? There's no obligation for them to do anything for you. Steam, the biggest early access platform on the planet, will not refund you. So that's it. That's it. You paid money and you didn't really get what you were expecting. Some people could say, hey, that's what you go in knowing. But again, this is affecting games, affecting game development, and actually stopping otherwise good games from being fully released and finished. Because, hey, the developer already made the money. They figure they made as much money as they want to make off it. They hit a roadblock, or they hit a part where it's really difficult to develop for, and rather than pay someone to do work for them or work really hard on it, they're just going to give up. That's what happens, guys. And since the game is not finished, and never becomes finished in many cases, they can deflect all criticism. And how do you review a game like that? How do you review an early access game? I mean, there's almost no real way to review it that people aren't going to say, hey, you can't criticize this, it's unfinished. The developer can endlessly say, we're working on that. We're working on it. It's not finished yet. It's early access. And that's their all-inclusive excuse to deflect all criticism of the game. You can't criticize my game because it's early access. I'm not done. It's in beta state. I'm still working on it. It's alpha state. I'm still working on it. And this leads to our next big complaint. They can promise big and deliver little, or deliver nothing at all. They can tell you, oh, we're going to do this, and 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 guess what? When it all comes down to it, they don't do any of that. Or they do it, and it's half-baked. Or they only do a couple of them, and it's half-baked. Or it doesn't really work out, or it remains buggy forever and never gets finished and never gets patched and fixed. So basically, the developer can say, hey, we're going to do that for you. And if a reviewer tries to review the early access game and say, oh, this is a problem here, this is wrong with the game really needs this, the developer can constantly promise, oh, we'll get to that, we'll do that too. That's a great idea, we'll include that. But has no obligation to do any of it. And this is with you paying them money. You see, if this were just a beta of a game offered for free, that's a different story. I don't think they should have many open betas because I think it's very dangerous to do that. If you have an open beta, you better darn well make sure that your game is pretty close to complete, and you should lock most of the content out of the open beta. Just make sure that your core game gets tested, especially if it's got multiplayer elements, that you test the load on the servers, kind of like they did with Bloodborne and Dark Souls 2. Essentially, they had a pretty much fully playable game with some issues to be worked out, and they were basically testing server load. That's fine, and there was no charge for that. So we've got all these other issues, and in addition to that, Here's one of my biggest complaints with early access. A game can be ruined by early access before it's ever released. What do I mean by ruined? Well, here's the issue. Everyone starts playing an early access game. People start jumping all over it. YouTubers are posting videos of this early access game. Look how cool this is, guys. Look how awesome this game. Oh, this game is going to be so cool when it's finally finished. It's going to get all these features, and it's awesome right now. And by the time the developer actually gets around to the point where they're trying to finish the game, well, guess what? Everyone's already bored of it. Everyone's already played it out before the main features or the biggest stuff ever got added to it. So by the time the game actually comes out of early access state, well, people are done with it. And this happens with a lot of games. And unfortunately, what that also means is that, well, I'm not going to sit down and bother making a review of a game that just came out of early access when I know that most of my audience is bored and done with it and doesn't care. Because a lot of YouTubers are making videos to make money. It's not their primary goal, but it's one of their goals. They have a passion for their channel, they have a passion for making videos about games, but they have to make videos that make money. Otherwise, they don't make money. And if they're doing it for a living, they have to make money. So are you gonna make a video about an early access game that everyone's already played out? Probably not. And that's one of my biggest complaints. It's because I don't want to play early access. I want to play a finished product. Finish your game, put in the features that you feel are necessary for the game to be feature complete so that I can play a completed game. But by the time I get to this completed game, well, people are already bored of it. And if it has multiplayer elements, here I come in super late to the deal, and everyone else is looking at me thinking, hey Fox, we're all done with that game. No one else is playing that. The servers are dead. I'm like, well, it just released. But they're like, yeah, but everyone played it in early access. I'm like, oh, that sucks. And it does suck. But that's the reality of early access. Another issue you have is developers constantly changing their goals. Like I said before, developers promise big and then often deliver little. They'll promise bigger than they can accomplish. It's like going to a Chinese buffet, you load up your plate. I've learned long ago not to do this anymore, guys. But people will load up their plate and suddenly realize, I really wasn't that hungry, and then they can't eat it all. And then it goes to waste. In the early access version of this Chinese buffet, eyes are bigger than your stomach phenomenon, developers were promised the world. And then they'll have to cut most of that out and bring their goals back down to something that's far more manageable. Oftentimes these developers are indie developers, or they're new, or they're branching out from a AAA company, and they're realizing, you know what, I don't know how to do this, and no one on our team knows how to do this, so we can't do it. And so they scrap all these goals, and eventually their game turns out to be nothing like what they promised. But again, they have no obligation. Even though you paid them, they can tell you, sorry, tough luck, you're not going to get what we told you you're going to get. People again can claim, well, that's the nature of early access, but that's what I'm saying. The nature of early access is bad for games and bad for the consumer. And you know what, guys? Another issue, while you're playing an early access game, sometimes they change so much of it that your progress in the game is mandatorily wiped. This happened with Terraria, however you pronounce it, and one of the reasons why I don't want to participate in these early access games. I don't want to spend 10, 20, 30 hours building something up only to be told, hey guys, on Friday we're going to wipe all your progress and you're going to have to start over. Again, people like to say, well, Fox, that's the nature of early access. And I'm saying, yeah, that's the point. The nature of early access is why early access is bad. You can't simply say it's okay because that's the way it is. I'm saying it's bad because of the way it is. It's not an excuse to say, well, early access is like that, so it's okay for early access to be like that. Do you see how that's circular logic? I'm trying to break through the circular logic and the circular reasoning and say the core elements of early access are bad for games. And I just want to end this discussion of early access by first of all asking you guys to comment below. Let me know what you think, positive or negative. Guys, just be polite and your comments won't get deleted, I promise you. But let me end with this question. What other unfinished products do you buy? I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and I'll see you next time.